all, I should congratulate the organizers, firstly for this particular topic, very timely, and secondly they have chosen a particular day which is historically the very important day. In fact, Information Technology Act was notified on 17th October 2000. Since then I have been telling that 17th October is the Digital Society Day of India, and it should be celebrated like that. I have told government also many times you should do that. 17th October you should have lot of activities related to cyber law awareness, because that was the day when in India digital contracts and related things became legally recognized. Similarly, July 1st is going to be the GST day for the rest of the history of India. It's a very important day, and I am sure that you should book July 1st for the future years also, because you can always talk about the day, how it progresses from this year to next year. We have to look at a lot of things. Okay. Now, during the day you are going to discuss a lot about cashless economy. My task is to bring a relationship between what technology people are doing and want to do and what government is doing, and link it to the legality of the whole process. So, I will be drawing upon cyber laws. Of course, I started my career as a banker, so I think it is relevant to mention it here. I was a banker in the non-digital era, and the time when bankers moved into some kind of digitization, we are talking of 1980s, when we had the ledger posting machines and branch level automation kind of a thing. I was working in the bank, and subsequently after 80s we had this great transformation in the banking system to the current day, when people are discussing why do we need banks. So, the discussion on cryptocurrency is basically a discussion that we want a decentralized, deregulated system of currency management, and they want to kill the banking. That is why I have chosen the main theme of my talk as disruption without destruction. We want, because technology people are interested in innovative implementation of technology, and we call that as causing disruption. Okay, we are all proud to cause disruption in the society. Okay, WhatsApp created a disruption in the communication, Zomato might have created a disruption in the hotel industry, like that. While disruption is essential, if it is accompanied by destruction, I do not want it. See, people have, in fact, Ram was showing this growth of frauds along with the technology. Now, if any one of them is a victim of the fraud, then only we will understand really what is the impact of that. Unfortunately, people like us have come very close to these fraud victims, and that is why whenever a fraud happens, our blood will boil. I do not know what will happen when if fraud affects us, we may explode. Now, even when you see others losing money, we really feel so bad. So, I feel that we should look at the cyber law in the context of what is happening around the country. To some extent, the government is also pushing things little ahead of the preparation, we can say. Everything is required, but you have to prepare the ground for meeting it, and we have seen that happen in the cyber or in the digitization of the banking, and maybe it will be something which will be discussed in other places also. So, when we look at the cyber laws, we are looking at the differing perspectives. One, lawyers have got their own understanding. I am not going to discuss too much on the sections and punishments and other these things. Technologies focus on innovation, driven by the passion for technology. More the disruption caused, better they feel. I do not know how many of you are real technologists. Technologists are like that. That is why cryptocurrency is a big passion. If you look at business, which includes all these intermediaries like banks, mobile service providers, and so many other people, including DigiLocker service providers, Aadhaar service providers, they are all intermediaries who provide IT-enabled services to make the citizens make use of whatever services are available, including an email service provider. These people look only at money, okay? They are not looking at anything else, whether the economy should develop, whether customers should be safe, all that is secondary. That's why in many of the e-banking contracts on the web, if you see the terms and conditions, banks, including big banks like ICICI Bank, will say, we will provide security as is commercially feasible, something like that. Okay, that is, they say, I will decide how much money I will put into security and only that much security I will give. I will not give security based on a risk assessment. See, in the standards, ISO, PCI DSS, what we say is, you should first make a risk assessment. You are doing this business, you are doing it in this way, therefore these are the kinds of risks, and we need to cover those risks. Cost becomes secondary. It is for the CFO to decide about the cost. Technology person will say that you have to cover these risks. Whatever risks you cannot mitigate, one way is to go for cyber insurance. If cyber insurance person gives you 100% coverage, risk has brought down to 0. If cyber insurance doesn't bring it to 0, there is a certain level of unabsorbed risk which the organization takes it as its own liability. But risk is a total risk, mitigated up to a certain extent, then covered through transfer of risk to a cyber insurance person, and lastly the unabsorbed risk which a person, which the organization takes. That is what the risk people say. But when you go to the businessman, which is represented by the board of directors, when the CISO goes to the board of directors and say that I want this kind of a security, the first thing the board will ask is, what is the return on investment? Why should I invest 25,000, 25 lakhs, whatever is this thing? What is the return? Only the day when a WannaCry or some other ransomware affects them, they will realize that after all, my CISO asked for one more server in which we could create a backup. We did not want to invest in that, and today that some unknown person somewhere sitting, he is asking for $10,000, that too not in dollars, in bitcoins. So the first thing he is asking me is to do one crime, buy bitcoins first, which is a black money, and then pay me through black money. So he is one collecting ransom on my behalf, and then over and above that he is making me commit a different kind of an offense. But actually we don't want companies to suffer that before finding it out. That's why people like us raise the flag. Sometimes people say, whenever I write on my Naavi.org, they say you are hyping up things. I say that sometimes hyping up is essential, because otherwise people are not able to understand. In fact, when I started talking about this information security way back in 2000, I used to focus more on information security, compliance, etc. People were not even listening. But the moment we talk of crimes and then say that if you want to avoid the liability, security should be there is a better understanding. That is the psychology of people. Okay. So that is why business people are focusing more on monetary gains, and that's why we have got problems. Regulators, whether it is the Aadhaar regulator or whoever it is, Reserve Bank of India, their understanding of technology is limited. Okay. The same trend, and of course they listened to my this thing, and the whole chapter which they had drafted was dropped. So I was, for that period, I was happy. Now recently, if you look at Reserve Bank of India regulations, there have been a couple of information security related advisories from the Reserve Bank of India, which have gone to the other extreme, something which the banks will find it very difficult to implement. You should have a honeypot, you should have a security operations center. All that is fine for State Bank of India, HDFC Bank and ICICI Bank. But when a cooperative bank is there, for them, even to get a security consultant and ask him to perhaps make an assessment or deliver a talk to the directors on one day, they will not be able to afford that cost. Okay. So there is a lot of things which these regulators sometimes make mistakes, and that is continuing today in the Aadhaar payment system. Today morning we saw our friend from Indian Bank was telling that instead of 12 cards, if you have one single card, it's very convenient. It is very convenient, there is no doubt about it. But what we are doing is, my risk of 12 different cards and 12 different pins is now getting converged into one card. NPCI has actually done that now already. And if it goes further, there will be universalization of risks for the customer. You bring all, you have got accounts in 5 banks. Now if one bank is hacked, at least your 4 banks, you're safe. Now when you merge this, one vulnerability in one bank, your money everywhere else will be wiped out. And if you have linked this happens in the cloned card system, there is a credit card you have got some limit. If you lose money, it has to be up to that limit. But there are some banks which say, please link your credit card to your savings bank account and fixed deposit account, so that whenever money is not there, I will transfer money from here. Okay. So when the fraudster starts drawing money from the cloned credit card, the moment money is exhausted there, money gets transferred from the SB account. Recently in one of the cases we saw 300 transactions done in a period of about 1.5 months in a particular client, where money is withdrawn through ATM in a foreign country. The moment debit entry comes here, money is transferred from savings bank, and after savings bank account is exhausted, money is transferred from the fixed deposit. Total is 5-6 lakhs of the customer is wiped out. This is actually what is going to happen if risk is consolidated in pursuance to convenience. It is for the customer to decide. Now Reserve Bank of India, the Damodaran Committee and others have suggested that please don't give an open limit to cards. They said a customer should be able to fix. If he wants a card with only 50,000 limit, he wants it like a prepaid card. That's why prepaid cards are better from risk management point of view. If you lose money, only that much. But the moment you link that prepaid card to anything else, then you are opening the chain. Okay. So Reserve Bank, the Damodaran Committee had said that this should be a feature. That is, people should switch on and switch off the usage of credit cards or debit cards or whatever is that. Like we used to do the locking of the STD in the olden days. Some of you don't know, youngsters will not know. Our parents and all, before making an STD, they will open the STD lock. Immediately after the call, they will close it. That is required for the cards. And that suggestion has been given to the banks, but they don't want to use it. Except I think City Union Bank is one of the banks which has done that. If my thing is correct, that is what others also should do. So regulators sometimes don't understand it, therefore they provide the guidance which are either not implementable or it is too little. So the need of the hour today is that we have to keep advising the regulators in such a manner that regulation should be dynamic, but there should be a gradual assimilation in the society. The latest threat to our existence comes from the bitcoins. Last month the government floated a public consultation, and a lot of people said bitcoin should be regularized, legalized, etc., etc. I am one of the persons who have taken the stand that bitcoin is like drugs. Okay, you should say no every time, even the first time, because bitcoin will succeed if you destroy the current banking system. Now that is where, what happens after that? Okay, you legalize bitcoin and put all your bank deposits into bitcoins. Okay, bank deposits all over India becomes zero. Now what will happen to the economy? That's what we have to think. That's where we have got a linkage between technology and economy today. We were used to talk about techno-legal aspects. Now techno-economic aspects have come into being. cryptocurrencies, particularly the privately held cryptocurrencies, are going to completely eradicate the current banking system, and I don't know what will happen if that really happens. People like us have been telling that cryptocurrency as a concept is fine, blockchain as a technology is fine, but what we want is a government regulated cryptocurrency, like a bit rupee. You tell me how to use technology, we will tell, and that will be beneficial to the government, but these private cryptocurrencies, let us keep it outside. But regulators need to understand that. Technology people sometimes don't care about law, okay? There is a lot of disrespect for law that should change. That is the need of the hour. You should respect law because law is there for a purpose. If you don't like the law, change the law. Do everything to get it changed. But if a law is there, let us not show our strength by disregarding the law. Law enforcement, of course, sometimes have got a discretion. When they use the discretion, I would like law enforcement to use the discretion in favor of the citizens more than the intermediaries who are all business people. Okay. So, the digital payment system has now brought this additional challenge that apart from the technology, law and behavioral science, all the three of which we used to talk about in the earlier information security scenario, now economics of money supply and usage is being hurt. Okay. Technologies try to disrupt, regulators try to establish the control, and the economy is in between and is being completely lost sight of. Because the finance ministry neither have technology people. I'm making some extrapolations and perhaps using some hyperbole. Please keep that within the real discussion, this thing. So economists, they neither know technology nor know law. They know only about monetary things. You ask the RBI governor, he is only looking at inflation. Okay. There are much more than that in the RBI regulations. So we are looking at how to bring in technology with security, and that is what I am going to look at. And basically I am going to just take a few instances and try to see how we can sensitize a community like this on the issues involved. For the records, the canvas of cyber laws which affects the digital economy is one, Information Technology Act 2000, brought in on 17th October 2000, substantially modified in 2008. It should be read along with all other laws, including IPC. Okay, so that is something which we should not forget. There is a separate Payment and Settlement Act 2007 which RBI has brought in, which is basically a regulation of the technology. May not be involved in, interested more in punishments and penalties. The third, which many of us have forgotten, I don't know how many bankers are here, there was an act called Negotiable Instrument Act. Do anybody remember that? Okay. Now, Negotiable Instrument Act also has an impact. Let me see some of the things how it comes. Then RBI regulations, regulations which are not laws but circulars. Okay. Then upcoming laws which are coming in the next couple of months. One is the Data Protection Act of India. Second is the ITA 2008 may be under amendments. Actually, a committee is there for a couple of months. Then Payment and Settlement Act itself is being amended because What All Committee of Reserve Bank of India has suggested certain changes. So we have to look at all these things. Now, the essence of Information Technology Act is, one, it brings the entire information technology industry within the ambit of laws by saying electronic documents are equal to paper documents. There is a way of signing an electronic document. You call it by digital signature or something like that. By bringing the equivalence, the entire legal structure of the country is made applicable to information technology related system, of which digital payments, digital currency is a part. Additionally, it talks about offenses, what are the penalties associated with them, what is the court which has to handle that. Lastly and importantly, Information Technology Act talks about what the companies should do in terms of compliance so that they will not become liable. When a fraud happens, there is a victim. There is a fraudster who is sitting somewhere, let's say in Nigeria, otherwise in Ghaziabad or somewhere. In between, there are a couple of intermediaries, which are banks and others. What are their responsibilities and liabilities is specifically laid out in Information Technology Act, and that is important for the business. Now, when we talk of this cashless society, we are, or less cash or whatever is that, we are looking at two things. One is digitization of the existing cash and currency. Okay. The second is creation of a new digital currency, that is the crypto coins and the bitcoins. Digitization of existing currency is presently being achieved through e-banking and m-banking. In fact, most of the benefits which technology people say that I will do this if you give me free hand, can be achieved by digitization of the existing system. We don't need bitcoins, we don't need cryptocurrencies to achieve what you want to achieve. Whether it's a Paytm mobile wallet, your money is in the bank, you never have to see it in cash, you can make transfers, and that is the economy which we are looking at it. When that can do what all you want to do in terms of bringing down the floating currency to near zero, why do you need a cryptocurrency? And what will cryptocurrency do? It will create a new set of stock of currency which is not within the boundaries of Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India does not even know. Today, if by one regulation, government says bitcoins are legalized, then about 6,32,000 crores of rupees equivalent of currency will get added to the system. That is actually 50% of the floating currency, nearly that much, and it is what Mr. Modi wanted to take off by the demonetization. In one stroke, that's 6,32,000, and where is it situated? Not all of it is with Indian citizens interested in India. A substantial part of it is with foreigners, many of which are with the criminals, particularly the ransomware people. It may be with China, which is an enemy country for us. It may be with Pakistan, which wants to use it for funding. So that is the kind of scenario which the creation of new digital currency will bring in if it is not regulated by the Reserve Bank of India. Whereas e-banking, m-banking, which is conversion of existing balances into digital form, is something which can achieve our objectives without affecting the economy as a whole. Now, the laws of banking remains the same even though Information Technology Act has come. That is where, when we look at cyber laws, we cannot forget that there are existing laws. Okay. Now, for example, Negotiable Instrument Act, 1881, amended substantially again in 2002, and then again 2015. Many people have only recognized it has made some changes in the section 138, bouncing of checks. But there is something more. For example, 2002 amendment, which became effective in February 2003, introduced the concept of check in electronic form and truncated checks. These are the two kinds of instruments in digital form which gave people right over money. After all, what is a check? Check gives you a right over money in the bank. Okay, you can transfer it, etc., etc. And that was digitized in 2002-2003. Now in 2015, they further clarified by saying that check includes check in electronic form. Check in electronic form, of course, we know that it's an instrument in writing containing unconditional order, etc. Now, when we use a mobile wallet or a UPI or BHIM, what is that the user is doing? He doesn't know whether it is BHIM or something. He knows that if I want to transfer money from my account to Mr. Ramesh's account, I have to do something. So instead of issuing a check, pay Ramesh rupees 10,000, I am putting some buttons or something like that, and the system understands that I am giving an instruction to my bank to transfer money to this particular person. That is what the check is. The check in electronic form is behind every mobile wallet transaction. So when we apply law, people like us who have not forgotten our old law, because we learned banking through that old law, so we cannot forget it, we immediately compare and say, what you are doing here is, instead of having a clerk, ledger clerk, normally we used to go, I said, please transfer money to my friend. Instead of that, I am telling it to the virtual friend, which is the mobile wallet. Behind that, the same laws will apply. That's why we need to debate how the whole system of wallets, etc., apply to these electronic instructions which go behind the particular transactions. Okay. The other thing which we have discussed elaborately in cases of bank frauds. In checks, we used to have a concept, there is a paying banker, there is a collecting banker. There are responsibilities for the paying banker, responsibilities for the collecting banker. And in the case of a fraud, sometimes the paying banker has to pay, sometimes the collecting banker has to pay. If my signature is forged, paying banker has to pay. If my check is credited to a fraudster's account, that collecting banker has to pay. Now what is happening? When in a UPI, Bank of Maharashtra or something like that, or whatever other these things, money is transferred from my account to another account, there is one paying banker, there is one collecting banker. Now we have to question, what are the responsibilities they have in this paying banker and collecting banker. Okay. In case of forged transaction, there is an established law. Forgery is a nullity according to the law. Now what is happening when a person puts my OTP or my password, he is actually doing a forgery. Information Technology Act does not recognize password as a method of authentication. If some bank wants to use authentication in terms of this, instead of a digital signature, it is a choice they have taken. Like in the case of a teller bank. In teller banks, you can walk into the teller, give him a check, and without verifying anything, he can take out the cash. That is the risk the bank is taking. Similarly, if a bank takes a risk in making payment without a digital signature, the legal risk belongs to the bank. This is what Reserve Bank of India told in June 2001 circular. It's called Internet Banking Circular. They said, if there is a hacking, if there is a denial of service, etc., the liability should be borne by the bank. Of course, they also went on to say, banks should cover their risks by taking cyber insurance. That's why I say, since 2001, there is a mandate for the banks from the Reserve Bank of India that they should have cyber insurance. Either the cyber insurance people have not pushed them, or they have not taken it, and that is why we are in a situation, if electronic forgery happens, why should I take the liability? The concept of people who know law, however good the forgery is, and the banker may say, nobody can distinguish this. This is so good a forgery that even if you bring the best handwriting analyst, he would not have found it. Still the law says that forgery is a nullity, check is a zero value thing. Same thing should apply to electronic forgeries. Now the government is talking of digital signature and e-sign, they are legally accepted. So all this forgery becomes part of the phishing transaction. Every phishing involves forgery. Okay. There have been cases where a customer has been negligent, has left his checkbook on his table, somebody has picked up that checkbook, committed a forgery and given it. Courts have held that merely placing it like that is not a negligence sufficient to make the customer responsible. Forgery is still a forgery. Likewise now, if somebody as a victim without knowing passes on his OTP or something or even a password, I would still like to argue that banker's responsibility remains. See, technology, we were discussing in the first session, technology has got a lot of potential. Reserve Bank has told, use adaptive authentication to identify whether a transaction is genuine or not. Recently in Mussoorie something was some fraud was there, I have raised the question that OTP has been revealed according to the bank. Now where did the OTP go? OTP went to somebody in let us say Lucknow. My customer is sitting here, and if my system is properly tuned, I know that the mobile instruction is not coming from Mussoorie or anywhere else in Chennai, it is coming from somewhere else. And my system should have identified and flagged that as a suspicious transaction, and it should have killed the transaction before it goes through. The bank did not use that adaptive authentication method, and therefore the loss occurred, not because the person revealed his OTP. That is also incidental. People in insurance industry know that there is something called proximate cause for the loss. There will be several losses. Ultimately, the proximate cause is more important. Now here the proximate cause lies with the bank. That's why I hold the bank responsible. I am an ex-banker, so don't think I am having something against them, but I am saying that is the responsibility. We would have done this in a manual banking. 100% I can tell you that if I am sitting there as a bank, if some farmer comes and he gives a check for 10 lakh of rupees, I will ask 100 questions before I pay that, because I know he is not having the capability of having a 10 lakh check. That is the manual intelligence which is now lacking. Now OTP is being promoted by Reserve Bank of India. It has been degraded in USA and other these things, but here we are using that as big this thing. And now when a fraud happens, definitely bank will say Reserve Bank has agreed for OTP. So we have got a problem. Even e-sign has got some problems. I don't want to go into it in detail. Similarly, evidence, how it is to be preserved, this is something the industry has to understand. There is something called section 65B, there is something called Banker's Book of Evidence. One has to look at that. This is where bankers are making the mistakes. Okay. So ITA 2008 compliance is the need of the hour. ITA 2008 is a very vast thing. Don't mistake it only for 43A and 72A. There are 90 plus sections, and there are different kinds of risks, and an organization should follow this. Don't be under the blind impression that if you are PCI DSS compliant, you will be compliant with anything else. ITA 2008 is bigger than that. PCI DSS or ISO 27001 is a best practice compliance, whereas this is a legal compliance, failure of which can take you to the straight to the jail. Okay, so give more importance to this and understand the details. One thing I would like business to understand is, even if you are not being non-compliant, don't be law breakers. Like what you are talking of in cryptocurrencies, there is a hotel in Bangalore that says, I will accept bitcoins. Okay, so I would like people to look at that. You are discussing bitcoin perhaps in the other this thing. I think I have already hinted of what I view on bitcoins, and if the government legalizes the bitcoin, then I told you the economic impact. Never confuse blockchain with bitcoin kind of a thing. Blockchain is good, but not necessarily bitcoin. Okay, and many banks are hiding behind privacy and confidentiality and helping the criminals. That is something which they should avoid. The net take off should be that government today has to broad base its consultations by consulting people who are more consumer oriented. You cannot have an RBI committee where SBI, ICICI, HDFC and some secretaries are sitting, others are not there. So I feel in a conference like this, when you prepare the end of the conference report, you should say that we are stakeholders in any of this, whether it's Bitcoin or other things, and climb a position in such consultation bodies. That is what I would like as a result of a discussion like this. Thank you. The whole thing cannot be discussed in 30 minutes, 40 minutes or something like that. It is only to raise the issues. Each one of you is intelligent enough to think further on that, and please think, and if you need any more clarifications, if time is there for question, I would not hesitate to answer. Thank you.